So guys, good afternoon. My name is Renee Ferreira. I'm a broker associate here at the Keller Williams real estate office here in Gretna. I've been a real estate agent since 2005, and I was the team leader for the Market Center for 13 years. And so during that time, I began hosting this PSI exam review, and have been doing it for several years because we recognize that many needed just some insight before they take the test, right? I want this to be interactive with you all, meaning we're going to use the chat to either ask questions or verify, or maybe go over some terminology or whatever the case may be. So today specifically, we're going to go over material that, based on experience, is relevant to the test, right? Mm-hmm. Today we're not going to do math. We're going to do math on the 21st, okay? But I'm going to show you some other ways to practice so that, so Ashley, being you testing this weekend,
mm-hmm.
you can use this time to still get some practice in for your math and other test questions that you could be getting, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
All right. So first and foremost, right? So I believe there's 80 questions on the national. And so keep in mind, Ashley and Carlisha, that there's only so much room for math questions anyway. So I've heard of some exams having, anywhere from 3 to 8 questions on your on math. Mm-hmm. So don't expect a lot, but obviously be familiar. We'll highlight just what to expect in regards to a type of math question. That way you're somewhat prepared, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So JD, if you can either share with me or type in the chat when, how long ago did you finish, or where are you in your process? Did you finish the course, or do you have your test PSI exam scheduled? So, okay, so just, all right, so just a question for everybody. So I want you to open your chat and tell me why real estate? What encouraged you to get into real estate at this time in your life? Do y'all see the chat at the bottom of your screen?
Mm-hmm. I see it.
Yeah, just click on that. There you go. And the reason I'm asking this is obviously to break the ice and get you guys comfortable in sharing. So this could be pretty intense material. So if I'm going to be talking the entire time, I don't want to say I'm going to bore you to death, but it's going to be pretty dry, right? The good news is that once you get through this test, it'll be so much more interesting. So you'll learn more about working with buyers and sellers and investors and a variety of types of sales, and I'm sure it will resonate as to why you chose to get into real estate to begin with. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint. All right. So welcome to my PSI review. There we go. Whoop, I don't want you to do that. All right, these are all the topics, right? I do want to make note of some of the topics that are not going to be extreme, not have a lot of questions on the test. Like over here in this middle column, right? Investment slides or the taxation, not too much on ethics law and policies, closing slides, risk management, property management. You just need to know their definitions. There's not going to be a whole lot of test questions on them, right? What you really want to focus on is this first column right here and contracts of the sale, right? So as we get into some of this material, I'm going to highlight what really you should focus on as opposed to otherwise. And I'll show you again, there's a form that you could download from the PSI exam that literally tells you how many questions of each topic are going to be on the test. Okay, so again, it'll tell you that, this topic has, I don't know, 20% of the questions on the test or something of that nature. Okay. So guys, feel free to stop me and answer questions, or like I said, if you want to put something in the chat box, I'll do my best to watch it carefully, and it'll be much more fun if this is all interactive. Okay. All right, so let's see. All right, so we're going to talk about the real estate business. All right, so about the real estate professional, the broker, the organization, and regulation and licensing. All right, so we're going to talk about the various fields in real estate industry, along with the real estate industry as it is regulated. Remember now, your real estate license is only good for the state in which you took it in, right? So you're only going to have a Louisiana real estate license. And now there are many states that are what we call offer reciprocity, like Arkansas and Alabama and Georgia. And there's like 13 states that will allow, because you've completed the exam and you have a license, it's an easier process to get a license in those respective states. So that being said, so real estate as a profession, as you know, we are independent contractors. You choose who you want your sponsoring broker. So as a salesperson, you have to have a broker that sponsors you. And we operate by the National Association of Realtors, which provides us with professional standards and policy. All right. So real estate activities will include real estate sales right? So there's residential, there's commercial, there's investment property, there's multifamily, there's land, right? Vacant land. So there's a variety of activities that correspond with real estate activities. And the regulation of business is to create, improve, maintain, let's see, I'm gonna put everybody on mute. And let's see. So skills and knowledge is you need to know market conditions, a little bit of law, financing, marketing, ethics, which is a big, big component of our industry, selling, communication, computer basics, right? We've gotten so technical. It's so important. It's become a big part of our, big part of who we are. Professional organizations promote interests of our entities and our practices and enhance our professional standings, right? Because again, we're independent contractors, and it's not like, you know, your broker can't tell you, you know, I hate to say what to do. Let's see. However, they can offer some standards in which to operate and make sure that we are, you know, abiding by a code of ethics that puts a level of professionalism in our industry. And a real estate brokerage is, they help us to procure buyer or tenants for any owners or landlords or vice versa. Forms of specialization could be geographic, could be a type of transaction, could be by client, business organizations, or form of client relationships. So the regulation of the business is all facets of the industry regulated by federal, state, and local laws, right? So that's why, again, the national test, right, is based on somewhat general laws across the country, and the state is state specific. So typically states is, you know, our state test is 30 hours of our 90 hours, right? And so it's specific to our rules of owning land and how that's treated. Agents must understand relevant laws and adapt their business practices accordingly, right? So you've probably seen in your Louisiana material that we are a community property state, right? You guys have seen that? And so what that means is that husband and wives share their real estate assets equally. So 50% goes to the spouse, and the other 50% goes to their children, right? And the real estate licensing laws, the primary body of law is whatever your jurisdiction is, right? License laws are administered and enforced under ours are dictated by the Louisiana Real Estate Commission. Okay, so and guys, as I go through this material, I'm gonna open the chat again. Let's see where to go. Oh, come on. I don't want that. Well, I was trying to open up the chat. So guys, talk to me about let's see where I was going with this. All right. Do you guys have any questions when it comes to the real estate business? All right, so here's a question. So it says, which of the following professional activities is a real estate broker or agent most likely to be directly involved in? All right. So I want you guys to type in your chat. Holding real estate as an investment, regulating use of real estate, transferring real estate ownership, or destroying existing improvements. So what do you think that might be?
Okay. See.
I heard somebody say it. Put that in the chat. What do we think it is? Look. All right. Transferring of real estate ownership.
Okay, great.
Okay, that's what we do, right? We procure buyers and sellers, right? We bring buyers and sellers together to transfer property, right? That's our purpose. Or rent property, or, right? Or we bring a tenant, a commercial tenant to a commercial building owner, right? He's looking to lease his property, all right? So we're responsible for bringing those two parties together and helping them and facilitating that transaction. That's our goal. All right, so let's go to the distinguishing feature of commercial property is that it is not occupied by an owner user. It has the potential to generate income from its use by a business. It is held by its owners primarily for its investment value. It houses multiple tenants. What's the distinguishing feature? So when you're taking a test, you're really going to have to look at your words and terms to determine the best answer. Now, your test is not going to try to trick you on purpose, but you are going to have to really carefully read your question and make sure you understand it to get the correct answer. So what you think? So the answer to this one, it has the potential to generate income from its use by a business, right? So even though, because if you saw beforehand, it's really easy to pick that it's held by the owners primarily for its investment value, which is true. But again, the whole point of owning a business is what? Y'all talk to me.
Making money.
To
Making
generate,
money,
to
that's
make
right. Thank you,
income.
Kalisha. You know it, right? So that is the answer, is what I'm getting at, right? So it has the potential to generate income from its use by a business, right? So the whole, remember, real estate's an asset, right? It's still regarded as the American dream, and the first step to building wealth is owning a home. And we are the advocates of that, right? Everyone deserves to own a home if that's what they desire to do so, okay? So it's our mission to help facilitate and encourage and, create opportunity for all buyers and sellers to, again, kind of go for that American dream, right? To have something of their own that they could build equity in and fix for themselves and, obviously, raise their family or live by themselves or whatever their choices are, right? But everybody deserves a great place to live. Would y'all agree?
Yep.
Because that's going to be your mission. All right, so a real estate professional who oversees the day-to-day operation of a specific property on behalf of the owner is what? And this is probably going to be the one question that you're going to have on this specific topic. What do you think that might be? Type in the chat, A, B, C, or D. Property manager, exactly, right?
Mhm.
This may be the only question you actually have on property manager. And remember, all your test questions are all going to be multiple choice. There's not going to be a trick, right? One of the answers is going to be correct. So remember, when you're taking your tests, use quantitative thinking, right?
Mhm.
So I know from all your studying, you're going to recognize what is either it's not or
Mhm.
whether it is, right? And you're going to be able to cancel out the others that you know just do not belong, right? So you're going to increase your chances by narrowing down the answer. And trust me when I say trust your gut,
Mhm.
right? Your gut is going to tell you the correct answer. Try not to second guess yourself, because many people have gone
Mhm.
back and changed the answer when the first answer was the correct one. All right, so if your gut's telling you something, go with it. Okay, don't try not to second guess yourself. All right, so property manager it was. So the real estate industry is regulated by federal, state, and local laws, as well as by its own professional code of ethics, local chamber of commerce, consumer protection agency, Better Business Bureau. What do you think that is? Type that in the chat.
Chamber. Mm. CB.
Remember what I said earlier, right? We are governed, or I don't want to say governed, but we follow kind of like the regs of National Association of Realtors. You guys ever see the R commercial or the NAR commercial on TV to support your realtor or use a realtor or something of that nature? You guys see that on television?
Mhm.
That's us. We pay for that, right? Through your dues, NAR will market for us, right? To encourage the consumer to use us in their real estate transactions. So the correct answer is its own professional code of ethics. Okay, so I want to show you, I as a broker sit on the professional standards committee at the local board, and we follow this, which is the code of ethics. So it is kind of like a legal standards of practice and articles that we follow to make sure we're all kind of choosing the high road when we make decisions. Okay. So that's all shared with us by the National Association of Realtors. All right, so the agency that administers and enforces license laws in each state is this is probably a test question, okay? So what's the agency that administers and enforces our license law? Is it Department of Revenue, U.S. Attorney's Office, the Real Estate Commission, Council and Similar Board, or Circuit Court of U.S. Court of Appeals? So we just kind of had that conversation. Is it A, B, C, or D? So yes, it is C, right? Real Estate Commission, Council, and Board. So the Louisiana Real Estate Commission and our national, our board is New Orleans Metropolitan Association of Realtors. So you probably see that realtor sign on I-10 in between Causeway and Clearview. All right, so we're going to go into the rights in real estate. So this chapter is really, really important. So this is going to have a lot of material on that test regarding your exam. So the real estate as property, right? Private ownership, right? Land. So there's 3 types of land rights. There's air rights, subsurface rights, and surface rights. So surface is the ground, subsurface is underneath like oil, right? And air rights. So if somebody builds a building downtown and doesn't want anyone else to take the view away, they can buy the air rights of the other building and make sure it doesn't go in front of theirs. Right? So you can sell surface, subsurface, and air rights separately, right? Or together. And of course, the unique aspect of land is that it's immobile. You can't move it, right? Land is land is land, right? So it's indestructible and every piece is different. So obviously there's no 2 pieces of land that occupy the same spot, right? So that's what makes land so valuable, is that it's all different and it's cut up like a pie. And so the real estate, land plus all permanently attached man-made structures, all right, AKA the house, right? Or the building or whatever case may be. Something that is, so the property is something that is owned by someone and has associated rights of ownership. The bundle of rights. You need to know this right here, right? This, I don't want that. All right, so the bundle of rights right here. I wish I would stop doing that. Possession, use, transfer, exclusion, and encumbrance, meaning they could put things on it, right? Like a fence, okay? This is probably a test question, this bundle of rights. And property is real or personal property. Tangible means you can touch it. Intangible means you can't. Okay. So if you're wherever you live, right, you obviously have a stove and a refrigerator, and you might have a patio table or something on the porch, right? That's personal property. The oven or the stove is part of the house. It's technically, right, it's built, it's like connected, right? So that's part of the real estate. However, a refrigerator, for example, could be personal property, right? Because when houses transfer, many people take their own refrigerator. All right, so the real property rights is the bundle of rights to be able to use, right? Build something on. We in Louisiana, we are surrounded by water. So we have lots of water rights, okay? And the state controls the water usage. Okay, so when you think about, let's see, Lake Salvador or below the Gulf, Gulf of Mexico, the state has some power to navigate and determine how it's going to be used. I don't know if you know this, but Jefferson Parish, for example, is like 45% water, right? In all its surroundings. Littoral rights. So here's a little cue to help you remember. Littoral beginning with the letter L can help you remember that it has to do with lakes. Okay, it stacks up against the property owner's land, right? And they may use, but the state owns underlying land. So the bottom part, right? The ground part of the lake. Riparian. Riparian means rivers, right? So kind of giving you a little hint of an easy way to remember this. So rivers are navigable, right? And it depends on where those rivers are and whether the owner takes them to the midpoint in the middle, right? Again, like, okay, so we were in Shreveport last weekend and they have a lake called Cross Lake, right? And there's a lot of houses on the outskirts of those lakes and everybody's got piers and boats and all those kinds of things, right? So they have some access to that lake, but I'm sure they had to get permission from the state, and the state had to determine how it was going to be used. All right, federal regulation grants all over rights of ownerships, controls the board usage and standards, and discrimination, right? Make sure nobody gets discriminated against. State regulation governs the real estate business and sets regional usage standards. Local levies real estate taxes, right? That's what we vote for sometimes. And controls specific usage, like the city of Gretna or the city of Harahan can dictate how the land is used. And then judicial regulation applies case law and common law disputes, right? So again, husband and wife gets divorced, right? So it's up to the common law of the state to determine how that's going to get settled, okay? So real versus personal property, and again, depends on how it's attached, right? And in fact, some mobile homes can literally be attached to the ground and makes it real property, right? It's not like you can just move a house, right? Fixtures is real property converted from personal property by attachment. Again, like a stove, right? Or air conditioning, right? It's attached to the house. All right, so differentiation criteria depends on its intention, how it's adapted. Trade fixtures, like a kitchen, like a kitchen in a restaurant, or a freezer, or a commercial freezer in a restaurant. Those are trade fixtures and are negotiated in the sale based on the value of those trade fixtures. Implements, so plants and crops. So Louisiana is perfect, or has a lot of farmland, right? So we grow sugar, we grow corn, we grow all kinds of plants and crops, and that's considered personal property for the owner. All right, and many times the land is leased or sold separately from the plants and the crops. And then how land is converted, all right? Transferring real property to personal property through being cut, right? That's what sever means, right? Severance means to cut, right? And personal real property through affixing or attaching. Affixing means to attach. All right, so here's a question. Real estate includes such things as fences, sidewalks, piers, parcel of land, mobile homes temporarily parked on a parcel of land, timber that has been cut is lying on a parcel of land, business equipment an owner or tenant has placed on a parcel. What do you think the real estate is? A, B, or C, or D? Mhm. Yes, right? So we just had that conversation, right? So a fence becomes attached because there are cement pillars that are that have wood stakes tied to them. So they become permanent, right? It's not like you can move a fence, okay? Same thing as the sidewalks. Not like, you know, you're not going to chop it up and take it with you. And then we just talked about piers off a lake or river or something of that nature. So an improvement means just that, right? Means we improve the property to make it better. So is it a modification of land to make it more useful? Modification of a structure. So a structure intended as a permanent attachment to land, a parcel of land that has been prepared for development. So what would you consider an improvement when it comes to talking about real estate? Right? So a structure is intended as permanent attachment to land. So that's exactly what we just talked about, right? A perfect example is a mobile home. There is a way to make a mobile home permanent attachment to the land, right? So when you build a house, you pour the cement slab, right? And then all the construction is tied to the slab. That's a permanent attachment, okay? Just to go back to that. So an improvement when it comes to talking about real estate, even though we know if we improve something, right, we're modifying the structure to make it better. That is a reasonable answer. But when it comes to the term real property, an improvement means we are making permanent attachment to the land, right? So we're taking the raw land, building a house on it, and it's going to be permanent. So the physical limitations of land are the surface of the earth, infinite space above the surface, the center of the earth and infinite space of the earth, the surface of the earth and all water minerals are below the surface to the center, the surface of the earth and the air rights above the surface to the point defined by local zoning. So what is the physical limits of land? What do you think that is? What makes sense to you guys? So it's the center of the earth and infinite space above the earth. Remember, there's three types of land. There's three types of rights, right? There's subsurface, surface, and air rights. So the center of the earth, so you can dig down and build a tree or plant a tree, right? So that tree becomes part of the structure, right? And infinite space above the earth. So that's where, again, you build the house, you plant the tree, build a building, all that. The rights to possess and use a property are inviolable, infinite, and unlimited, limited by what the laws allowed, dependent on the type of property involved. So we already know the rights to possess. There's no, it's not, right? The center of the earth and infinite space above the earth. Let's look at that question again. Or did we answer that right? Oh. So it's limited by what the law allows. So our state, parish, and municipal governments dictate how we can use the land. All right, that's why we got to get permits, right? So every municipality, or Jefferson Parish and Orleans Parish, they have a permitting process when you want to build something, okay? And it goes through lots of different channels. So you got to get the architectural plans approved. Then every time you hit a milestone, like putting up the structure or the AC or the plumbing or electrical, they all have approval or permitting processes, right? That are dictated by, in our case, the city of Orleans or Jefferson Parish or the municipality. So the municipality can determine and kind of set the standards where we have building codes, right? So that's where the permitting process comes in, to make sure that we're all following the current building codes. All right, so by definition of personal property, includes real property, is a property that is not real property, is a property owned by an individual, or is real property that is not attached to real estate. We kind of had a discussion about that. What do you think that is? Yes. Right? Perfect. It's is any property that is not real property. But that I know some of you, real property that is not attached. So that could be an answer too. Okay. But also what could not, so an example of what could be any property that is not real property could be a crop or a plant. All right, so some plants can be dug up, and I think that's their reasoning for having B. So the right to build a structure on top of an existing structure and is an example of the right to encumber, a surface right, the rights to improve, air rights. So we kind of talked about that too. The right to build a structure on top of an existing structure. Is air rights. Remember, so if you're building a building, right, and you got a building lower next to you, and you don't want to block their view, you can buy those air rights, right? Or if you buy those air rights, you can build on that. So remember, keep in mind that there's air rights, surface rights, and subsurface rights. So you'll see subsurface rights for, especially for Louisiana, it would be oil rights, okay? So those are sold, mineral rights are sold separately and, you know, could be separately or together in a sale of real estate. All right, littoral rights concern which of the following bodies of water? I kind of gave you a hint for that. So lake, entirely contained within the boundaries of the owner's property, streams and rivers, navigable lakes, seas and oceans, navigable streams and rivers. Navigable lakes, seas, and oceans. I want to go back to that. Hang on. All right, so the reason it wouldn't make this right is lakes entirely contained within the boundaries of an owner's property. Sometimes it's on the outside of the owner's property, right? It's on the edge or something of that nature, all right? Which is why it wouldn't be A. Now, streams and rivers is littoral. Right? Littoral rights involve bodies of water like lakes, and riparian rights involve moving water like rivers and streams. here's the questions. So riparian rights concern which of the following bodies of water? Lakes, seas and oceans, streams and rivers, navigable lakes. Yep, streams and rivers, right? So what is a fixture, right? If there's anything you can do for yourself is make sure to understand some of these common terms. So a fixture is any item of personal property located within the boundaries of the parcel of real estate, an item of personal property that has been converted to real property, an item of real property temporarily placed on land for the purpose of conducting business, an item of personal property that has been left in one location for a period of 1 year. What would be a fixture? Very good. So an item of personal property that has been converted to real property. So meaning like I said, I'm gonna go back to using a range oven or a sub-zero refrigerators that are built into the walls, right? It turns it into real property because it becomes permanently attached. So even though it is attached to a structure, an item may be considered personal property rather than real property if what? The owner originally intended to remove it after a period of time. It can be removed without altering the appearance of the structure. It is unnecessary to the physical integrity of the structure. The owner installed it at some time after acquiring the real property. What do we think? The owner originally intended to remove it after a period of time. Again, a refrigerator is a good example. Or let me think what else. A wall unit, okay? Even though a wall unit could be technically fixated to the house, I mean, or you know, the TV mounts, right? As ugly as that they are to remove, right? For all the flat screen TVs, that can be removed. Okay, but most people leave the TV mounts because it just leaves a really bad spot in a room, whether it be a bedroom or a living room or something of that nature. But a good example is those flat screen TV mounts. All right, so now we're going to go into interests and estates. Again, another important chapter. All right, so in real estate, we have the right to use, possess, use, transfer, encumber, meaning to touch or put something on it, and exclude, meaning you can exclude, right? You see no trespassing signs, right? So you exclude people from coming on your property, right? It's not open to anybody to just walk up. So interest in estates and land. So any combination of the bundle of rights and for estates to encumber, to use, or police power, right? So sometimes a parish or a municipality, for example, they might ask to buy your land so they can build a bridge or a ramp like they did for the Crescent City Bridge, right? When they made the addition of the second bridge, some of those neighborhoods underneath had to be taken, or actually the state bought the land. So, and life estates include the right to possess and freehold. duration is not necessarily limited. So this is the most, freehold is the most, what do you call it? Defined usage of using the real estate. So when you have a freehold lease or freehold sale, means you have complete use of it. So a freehold estate implies ownership. A fee simple estate, most common form of estate, not limited by one's lifetime. So fee simple absolute is the highest form of ownership interest. And defeasible means it can revert to previous owner for a violation of conditions, right? So sometimes a grandfather, right, passes away, leaves a piece of property to someone. However, they might have someone to oversee it, or they might be a minor. And if something falls through based on that condition, can go to someone else, right? And they're going to put that in a will or something of that nature. Then estate and land. Fee estate passes to another upon a death of a named party, called the remainder. Interest of the named party to receive estate after holder's death, right? That might be a spouse, okay? And reversion, the interest of previous owner to receive estate after holder's death. Again, that's a perfect example of a spouse. Remember, because Louisiana is a common law, you live with someone for 7 years and you're sharing the property. All right, so conventional life estate, full ownership interest limited to lifetime of tenant, created by agreements between parties. Ordinary on death of the life tenant passes to remainder man or owner. Porta V, you need to know that term. On death of another, passes to remainder man or previous owner. Automatic creation of estate through operation of law designed to protect family survivors. So legal life estates, right? So there's a judicial process to transfer property, right? And you guys probably read about intestate and testate. All right, so you see all these terms, homestead, dower, and courtesy, right? These are really important to know for your test. Right, the homestead is the right to own principal's resident. Laws to protect homestead from certain creditors. So that's why there's two types of different bankruptcies, right? There's Chapter 7 and Chapter 11. And one of them is to protect the house and make sure your creditors can't take your homestead away. And then dower and courtesy. So again, it's because of it's a result of a widower that takes the real property. So leasehold estate, non-ownership possessory estates of limited duration. Estate for years means a specific time, right? It's per the lease and the terms that are stated in the lease. So lease term renews automatically upon acceptance of a monthly or periodic rent, right? So there are, I'm sure you guys have read that once a lease expires and you haven't filled out a new one, it's month to month, right? And let's see, estate at will is a tenancy for indefinite periods subject to rent payment and cancelable with notice. So again, it's specific. And then estate at sufferance. tenancy against landlord's will and without an agreement. So you might have like a hostile tenant, right? Like I said, it means that at some point the landlord is suffering, having to go to extremes to remove that person from their property. So the owner of a life estate in property does not pay real estate taxes, is entitled to possession of the property, may not receive income for the property, is not reasonable for all repairs to the property, or responsible. What do we think that one is? Remember, the life estate is the most secure form of ownership. So it's going to be B, right? So it's entitled to possess the property. There y'all go. So the life estate owner is responsible for paying real estate taxes. We know that. And is entitled to all income and profits, as well as being responsible for all repairs of the property. So a grandmother owned a life estate measured by her own life in residence. She leased the property for 5 years using a standard lease contract. Shortly thereafter, she died. The lease was valid only as long as she was alive, valid for the 5 years, invalid because she and the owner of life estate cannot lease property, valid for up to 1 year after her death. Make your best guess. What makes sense after what we've read? Is valid as long as she is alive, right? That's probably a test question, right? So a life estate may be leased, but that interest is forfeited upon the death of the life tenant or the person whose life is the measurement, right? Can you go back to the question? Sure. All right, so a grandmother owns a life estate, right? Meaning that's the biggest form of ownership, okay? By her own life in residence, so she owns it. She leased the property for 5 years using a standard lease contract. Shortly thereafter, she died. So technically, when a person dies, the lease is void, okay? So then, because what's going to happen is, obviously there's more to it, but now the residence goes to her estate and whoever the heirs are, and whether it's, dictated by a will or not a will or whatever the case may be, right? So remember, if somebody doesn't have a will, it's operated or divided by the state law, okay? That's why it's important that if you own property, make sure you let somebody know or put it in writing what happens, unfortunately, after you're gone. Or the state will dictate that. All right, so Charles holds a life estate, again, the biggest form of ownership, in a house measured against his life. Charles' life estate is an estate of inheritance, example of future interest, limited in duration, a non-freehold estate. What do we think? Life estate measured against his life. Very good, right? And this hopefully gets you used to reading the question. So his life estate, freehold estate that terminates upon the death of the owner of the life estate. So the country zoo holds title to its land with the condition that if it charges admission fees, the title will revert to the original grantor of the estate. This is an example of fee simple, defeasible fee estate, legal life estate, conventional life estate. I'm going to let you answer, then I'm going to explain. All right. So defeasible, mean it's defeased, right? It ends, yes, right? So defeasible means it terminates. So defeasible and terminate are synonymous. So when something gets defeased, means it ends. So two people own a house, each having an individual equal interest, undivided equal interest. So it's 50-50. Well, actually, no, it's actually 100-100. Which of the following best describes what they own? Each owns 50%, each owns 100%, each owns 50% of the estate, each owns 100% of the estate represented by and 50% of the physical house. I kind of gave you the answer for that. So undivided equal interest means 100, each owns 50% of the estate represented by the real property, but no physical portion of the real property. So it's an undivided interest. So if the duration of an owner's rights in an estate cannot be determined, the owner possesses what? An indeterminate legal estate, leased fee simple, freehold estate, leasehold estate. Yep. So, all right. So it's freehold, right? So let's go back. Remember, okay. Remember, you're going to use your reasonable deductions, right? We know leasehold is lease, right? We know it's not going to be that. So we're talking about owner's rights. So it's either going to be freehold, right? It's not going to be lease. So you're going to cross those two out. And it's, you know, is it an indeterminate legal estate? Not so much, right? So we know it has to be freehold. So that's the way to kind of reason out your answers. So the distinguishing feature of a leasehold estate is ownership of an interest by a tenant, temporary ownership of the full bundle of rights and property, unlimited ownership of one right in the bundle of rights, or duration limited by a lease term. Distinguishing feature of a leasehold estate, right? So we know we're renting. And I'll explain here in just a minute. Duration limited by a lease term. Very good, right? Because we know it's not ownership because the tenant doesn't own it, right? It is temporary, but they don't have a full bundle of rights, right? Because a tenant can't sell it. And then there's not, a tenant doesn't have unlimited ownership, right? So we know its duration is limited. Which of the following is a freehold tenant? Right? So remember, tenant. So we're talking about leasing. The owner of a freehold estate, the leasee in a leased property, the leasee of a freehold estate, an owner of an estate in land. Which of the following is a freehold tenant? All right, I don't think that's right. All right, so the freehold. So that, I have to follow up on that one, guys, because I think it's because a tenant is a leasee, right? So we know it has to be a leasee of a leased property or a leasee of a freehold estate. So I would say C if it's a freehold, if they have a freehold estate. So I might have to follow up on that one. All right, so homestead, dower and curtsy, right? And elective shares are examples of conventional life estate, fee simple absolute, ordinary life estate, or legal life estate. A legal life estate. Very good. All right, ownership. All right. All right, so these are really important, okay? Tenancy and severalty. Sole ownership of a freehold estate. You need to really know these terms. It's really important. These are going to be on your test. Tenancy and severalty, tenancy in common, joint tenancy, and tenancy by entireties. All right, so the key thing with tenancy by entireties, it has to be a husband and a wife. Joint tenancy, tenancy against landlord's will and without an agreement. And tenancy in common is equal undivided interest. So we had that question earlier. With survivorship, which means, right, if a husband and wife have a equal undivided, meaning if one person dies, it goes to the survivor of that relationship, right? Requires 4 entities to create: time, title, interest, and possession. So community property. So again, Louisiana is one of those community property states. So per state law is a joint ownership of property by spouses as opposed to separate property. Separate is acquired before marriage or by gift or inheritance. Tenancy and partnership is an ownership by business partners. A trust is property granted by trustor to fiduciary trustee. A living trust is a personal and real property ownership created to take effect during one's lifetime. So they're still alive, right? But in order to gain assets, it's conditional. And the person of that trust has stated that. And a land trust, real property ownership, where grantor and beneficiary use, control, but it does not appear on public records. Condominiums means they own one little piece, right? So if you got 4 condominiums in a building, they only own 1/4 of that building and the common areas. They share, so they pay a common area fee to maintain the common areas, like driveways or sometimes they'll have patios or some sort of recreation on the facility. All right, co-ops means they all own the building together. They have shares. And then timeshare is a lease of ownership for a specific time. So they get to, I'm sure you might have heard timeshares that people get maybe like a week a year or something like that in various places, and they have to use that week, or they get to trade that week or something of that nature. All right, so 3 individuals own a hotel as tenants in common. One of the individuals decides to sell all of her assets. She may legally sell because of a tenant in common, not sell because of tenant in common interests, and sell because of a tenant in common has undivided interest, or no sell because there is a right of survivorship. They can sell because a tenants in common has an undivided interest in real property that is transferable. So a perfect tenant in common would be like a condo. They can sell their condo. They don't need permission from the other condo holders to do that. All right, so included among the legal requirements of taking title to real property as tenants in common is that ownership and interest must be equal. Each co-owner may have unequal shares in the property. A co-owner cannot will his interest in a property. The last survivor owns the property in severalty. So each co-owner may have unequal share in the property. So the other requirements are legal requirements of joint tenancy. So let's go to it back and take a look. All right, ownership interest must be equal. So that's joint, right? A co-owner cannot will his interest in a property. So if he co-owns, means he co-owns with someone else. So if that owner goes away, it goes to the other co-owner. And then the last survivor owns the property in severalty. All right, so a husband and wife own property as tenants by the entireties, right? So the key to remembering this phrase is that it has to be by a husband and wife. So the husband dies and his will names their son as an inheritor of the property. Which of the following statements is correct? The son and his mother own the property as tenants in common. Son owns the property in severalty. The son and his mother own the property as joint tenants. The son has no interest in the property. The son and his mother own the property as tenants in common. Good job. Is characterized by the right of survivorship. So the husband has no rights to transfer his interest by will. The wife will hold the interest. So when a tenant in common dies, what happens to the tenant's interest in the estate? It is divided equally among the survivors. Surviving tenants must buy the interest. It becomes a joint tenancy. It passes by probate to the deceased tenant's heirs. Passes by the probate to the deceased tenant's heirs. Right? Tenant in common. Oh, tenant in common is co-ownership, that the individual's interest gets inherited. So when a joint tenant dies, what happens to the tenant's interest in that estate? It passes to the descendants' heirs, passes as tenancy in common. The joint tenancy terminates. It passes to the surviving joint tenant. Yep, passes to the surviving joint tenant. Good job. So if a co-owner in a joint tenancy or tenancy in common wants to dispose of his or her interest against the wishes of the other co-owners, the co-owner can do what? Sue in court, deed the property to himself, create a trust, file a foreclosure suit to force the other owners to sell. Yep. All right. Co-ownership allows for any owner to force the property to be proportioned, meaning it has to be divided. Two individuals can own a house as tenants by the entireties. They elect to do what? At the time acquiring title, they are blood relatives, they are married, they incorporate. This is a given. Yep, right? Remember, tenants by the entireties has to be married. When an estate is held in trust, who holds legal estate? The trustor, trustee, beneficiary, property manager. Who holds legal title? The trustee. The trustee has the authority to sign. So a condominium owner's assessment for maintenance and operation are based on the unit's pro rata share of floor space, unit's pro rata share of the property, number of shares that the owner purchased in the condominium association, assessed value of the condominium unit. Pro rata share of the property value as defined in the declaration. So there is a bill of rights, right, for when you own a condominium, and everything is written out of how everything's divided, how the common areas are used, how their individual properties are used, right? So that's what I mean. So a condominium is defined by their Bill of Rights and how it's declared. So the owner of a co-op, so on the other side of that, owns shares in a corporation, a fee simple interest, tenancy in common, a ground lease in the physical unit. Yep, they own shares. It's like buying stock. All right, how we doing, guys? What time is it? It's about 10 to 7. I know it's a lot to digest. All right. Hang on a second here. I want to go back to the beginning. All right. So we've gone through the real estate business, rights in real estate, interest in estate slides, ownership slides, and we're about to go into encumbrances and lien slides. And I know this is a lot. I really want to be able to touch on contract law and agency slides, listings not so much. So finance slide, the financing is really important. So I know we're not going to be able to hit on everything, but how would you guys like for me to send you the slide program for you guys to be able to kind of read through? Would that be helpful? All right, well, make sure I have your email. Make sure I have your, all right, so publicly. All right, there's my email address. Send me a note, right? And I will copy it. I will copy it to you guys. All right, because it's going to be really hard to digest everything and to hit on everything. But this will give you a good little background of everything. So encumbrances and liens. So it's how a property is used. So an encumbrance is like a fence, right? Or encumbrance might be if your neighbor decided to pour a driveway and it crosses over on your property. That's an encumbrance, okay? A lien, on the other hand, is if you didn't pay something and the person that you need to pay puts a lien on your property that you can't sell it without them getting paid first, okay? So, so an easement is a right to use portion of another's property, right? Utility easements, right? So Atmos and Entergy have easements on all of our property, right? In order to give us gas and electricity, okay? Easement upper tenant is the right to use and restrict adjacent servient tenant. So I don't know if you guys have ever been to Crown Point, right? So if you go down Barataria all the way down, there's one road in and one road out, right? But it just so happens that one road crosses over everybody's property. So they had to give the parish an easement so that everybody can get to their property, because if you've been to Crown Point, they own all the way to the canal, right? Remember that canal is navigable, okay? It flows, that canal flows all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, okay? So depending on, so a lot of farmers, sometimes a road has to go through a farmer's land so people can get to their own property, right? So easement and gross is a right to use property that does not attach to the real estate personal. So easement creation is voluntary or by necessity or by prescription or by eminent domain, which is government, right? Sometimes the government needs access to your property for one reason or another. Easement termination, how it's, if it's abandoned or condemned, or the change of purpose, maybe it's changed from commercial to residential. Encroachment, so again, somebody might intrude on your property. And then licensing means a personal right to use. So, you know, the state of Louisiana sells hunting rights, right? You got to get a hunting license or a fishing license, right? To use someone else's property to hunt or fish. So that's a real popular thing in Louisiana, as you know. And then there are deed restrictions, right? So that's typically filed at the local government to determine what conditions or what deed restrictions there are on certain parcels. All right, so a lien, right, is basically an attachment for a debt. They're looking for payment. It could be voluntary or involuntary. It ranks, right? Some people get paid before others. Could be a superior lien or a junior lien. It means, so you know if it's a junior lien, they gotta get in line. Foreclosure, you guys have heard that, means if there's so someone can foreclose, so the lender can foreclose if he hasn't gotten the money. So there's a mortgage lien foreclosure. which is judicial, meaning it has to be by a judge or in a court of law. Just judicial foreclosure. And then a non-judicial is a power of sale, meaning they can hand over the keys. And deed in lieu of foreclosure, so they can be given to someone else knowing that it's in foreclosure proceedings. So specific liens would include all of the following except. So we're talking about liens. Remember, liens are debts that need to be paid. Is it a mortgage, judgment, real estate, or mechanic? So it's judgment. Remember, specific lien would include all of the following except. Yes, right? So a mortgage, real estate, right? So Uncle Sam or the municipalities get paid, and anyone who does work on your house gets paid too. All right. All right. A homeowner employed a contractor to build a swimming pool on his property. Upon completion of the swimming pool, the contractor filed a lien to receive payment of the contractor fees. Such filing could be considered any of the following except. Remember, as you're reading that question, make sure you look for words like except or best. Right? So it's a general lien. A mechanic's lien is a specific lien and an encumbrance. A general lien would apply to all of the owner's property. So the money can come from anything that they own. So a family buys a 40-year-old house. The broker tells them the garage was built 30 years ago, but the buildings are located on a postage stamp size lot. The family hires a surveyor who tells them that the garage extends 6 inches onto the neighbor's lot. Because the husband has taken a real estate course, he realizes that this might be a prescriptive easement, and through court proceedings could become a dominant easement, a license, a servient easement, or an adverse possession. Adverse possession, right? So a prescriptive easement is similar to adverse possession in that if one uses another's property for a statutory period of time, one may acquire a real property interest. The difference is that a prescriptive easement gives one the right to use, while through adverse possession, the courts can grant ownership of the land that has been adversely occupied. So there's all kind of legalities, right, to cross someone else's property. So in what kind of easement is there a dominant tenant and a servient tenant? Easement in gross, commercial easement, personal easement, or easement per tenant? All right, so there's dominant, meaning they have the property, right? And a servient means they get to use it. They got to cross it at some point in time. I don't know if that makes sense. And it's this one, right? With an easement per tenant, one property serves another, right? So think of dominant and servient, to serve. So you get to serve the dominant where the dominant gets to use it. So if the owner of a property has a court-ordered easement to drive across property B, right, that's exactly what we're talking about, is the only way for A to have access to a public road. The easement is a what? Yes, it is necessary, right? Right? He's got to get to the road. So it makes it necessary to have access. That's what I mean by kind of use your good judgment in answering some of these questions, and you'll be just fine. So encroachment, right, means you kind of sneaking up on someone else's property. So an easement that has not been recorded on the title, an unauthorized physical intrusion, a right granted by a property owner, a structure that does not comply with zoning ordinances. Yep, an unauthorized physical intrusion. That's what an encroachment is. So a lien is what? A debt incurred, promissory note, creditor's claim against a property as security for the debt, document that creates an easement. Creditor's claim, right? That's exactly what it is for a debt that wasn't paid for. So like a plumber or electrician or contractor, right? If a contractor rebuilds a house and it doesn't get paid, they could put a lien on your property. So which of the following tax liens is a junior lien? Special assessment, inheritance, income tax, ad valorem tax. Based on your own experiences, either from your parents or grandparents, what do you think that might be? So we're looking for what would be a junior lien. All right, there are other liens that take precedence even though they are not recorded. First in chronological order, like property taxes. So property taxes take preference. So a special assessment is kind of like a property tax, right? So Timber Lane subdivision has a special assessment that's added to their property taxes to help pay for the golf course. I think Stonebridge has a similar special assessment to pay for extra police protection or something of that nature. Inheritance tax, well, inheritance tax is issued by the government anyway, right? That's usually dictated by the government. And so is ad valorem. Ad valorem is the property tax. All right, so like I said, guys, I know it's 7 o'clock. How are we doing? You want to unmute yourselves and talk to me?
Still hanging in there.
I know it's so much to digest, but we've gone through some of the most important slides. So let's just touch. I'm going to just go through. So we got about 20, 25 more minutes. So I'm just going to, without the questions, I'm just going to run through contract law and the agency slides. Okay.
Okay.
That's going to be important. Which is slide 378. So why don't y'all give me your ahas up until this point? What have you learned or not learned, or what stood out the most to you guys from what we've done so far? Why don't you type that in the chat if you would for me? Oop, I didn't want that. Hang on, guys, got to fix that. That's going to drive me crazy. All right, wait a minute. I'm going to have to pull that back up. Damn it. All right, let's try this again. All right, so give me your thoughts. What are your ahas from this session so far? It was familiar for me. I just got, okay, good. Okay. Carlisha, that's probably the best thing you can do for yourself is try not to second guess yourself, right? Like I can't emphasize enough to make sure you go with your gut because it's probably correct. Okay, because like I said, you guys know you've been studying and reviewing and all these different kinds of things. Let me see what I got here. All right, contracts is important. Okay, so a contract has legal characteristics, right? So a contract is binding. So if both parties sign, the buyer and the seller sign the contract, they're both bound by the terms of that contract. So earnest money is the deposit. So they have to secure or offer something in good faith that they're going to abide by the contract. And normally it's $1,000 or more. The conditions must be met for the contract to be enforceable. Buyer may sue for cancellation or damages or vice versa, right? If someone defaults, the other person can sue. But that's where we come in, right? If we do our jobs really, really well and explain the ins and outs of the real estate transaction and make sure your buyers or sellers understand what's happening, you can avoid those type of situations. Yes, you do find out the same day. You find out after. So let's talk about that for a second. So when you sit down at your test, you're gonna take your national first, and then it's at the end of that, it's gonna ask you if you're ready to start your state. And after you finish both, you'll get the answer. You'll get your pass or fail for each one once you click the button. All right. Okay, JD, I'm glad think you know more than you thought. That's awesome. That's awesome. You're feeling comfortable. All right. Let me see what else I got. All right, so there's an option to buy. You'll see that in some MLS listings. Contact requirements or actually should be contract requirements will include expiration date, the price, any conditions, any special provisions. But remember, all contracts have legal aspects and legal ties to them, right? Your buyer or seller just can't walk away. All right, contract for deed. I mean, the deed is actually the ownership paper, okay? Interest is right. Seller may encumber or assign interest, default or recourse. So there's recourse on both sides from both the buyer and the seller. If one cancels or defaults, and someone can claim for damages. All right, so that's that one. Hang on, let me see this. You're not going to have a whole lot on listing agreements. That'll be in your post 45. Agency. This one's important, right? It's important that your client or your consumer understand the relationship or the role that we play in their transaction. And this is what is called our agency relationship. We have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure our clients or the consumer or whoever our prospects understand what we're obligated to do. So that being said, our basic role, right, is to be the principal to our clients, right? Our clients hire us as an agent or a broker, and to find a ready, willing, and able customer to buy, sell, or lease, right? And we as agents have a fiduciary responsibility to be honest, to provide valuable information so that they can make a good decision. One of the key issues of securing our relationship is trust and confidence, right? In the past, the consumer has, it's taken a lot of work for us to gain their trust and confidence that we're doing this for the right reasons. So the types of agencies are universal, general, and special, right? So we as realtors, special, one single business transaction, right? Just because you did one transaction with a client doesn't mean they have to hire you to do another one. You have to earn that. All right, so creating an agency relationship is either expressed or oral, okay? And this is where procuring cause comes in, and we can actually, if we're kind of seen as kind of hijacking someone else's client, we as a realtor can get in trouble for that. And then, so it's always best if you're going to terminate a relationship with a client to do it in writing, do it through an email. We'll make sure it's mutual, right? Kind of keep yourself out of trouble. So again, we as realtors have a fiduciary responsibility to have skill, care, diligence, to be loyal, obedient, meaning to do the right thing, be confident, to disclose, right? We get in trouble for hiding information, and to be accountable. So our duties to customers, so there's a difference between a client and a customer, right? So a client is actually someone you've actually agreed to hire you to pursue a transaction. A customer, you might just be sharing information, but you still have to be fair and honest. So our principal duty is to provide information and to be compensated. Our breach of duty has liabilities, the loss of a listing or compensation. Remember, guys, we don't get paid until the transaction closes. So to have care throughout the transaction is really, really important. All right, so there is a single agency, one, right? Buyer to seller, you're representing one person. Sub-agent, so technically because we have a broker that sponsors our license, we are a sub-agent of the broker. Dual means you're representing both sides, and no agency means we're facilitating. We're just being nice. So agency disclosure, there's a form for that, right? And everybody has that customer information form, right? That's the first thing you fill out at a first face-to-face of the intention of doing business, okay? That's probably a test question. So you'll have, there's objectives of all the disclosures. There's a seller agent disclosure, which is basically a listing agreement. Buyer agent disclosure upon first contact face-to-face. Dual agency, there's a form for that. So your seller has to consent that it is okay for you to represent the buyer and the seller, which means you cannot compromise either position, right? You cannot give away compromising information that will put either the buyer or the seller in a bad position. So you have to remain neutral. And then a facilitator just you're just facilitating the transaction. Okay, so agency is really important. You're going to get some test questions on that. So I'm going to stop sharing. So guys, I think we've gone over most of the major items. Okay, there are a few more, like financing. You'll need to know what FHA, VA, what the loan to value ratios are, or debt to income ratios are. Those will be important. We'll probably cover those more in the financing section. I think we're going to do that on the 21st. So if you haven't taken your test by the 21st, you'll be able to sit in on that. So again, are there any questions, or is there anything that I could do to help make this session valuable or better for you guys? I know it's been a lot to digest, for sure.
It's been great to me. I don't have any questions. I just think I need more time into studying for my test on the 17th. But all the material so far is pretty familiar to me, and I have most of it as well. And I also appreciate the slideshow you'll send us.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. So let me see here. Like I said, so I sent you guys my email address, mrenee@kw.com. Send me a note. So Joycelyn, let's see.
I sent mine already.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys, I'll get that sent out within the next, you'll get it before tomorrow morning. And you guys will be able to review that. So feel free to obviously use the Q&A components. The Louisiana section is in there as well. And so you'll be able to study that. And I think I got math in there. But like I said, we're going to review math on the 21st. We'll go over. So Ashley, I know you're taking your test Saturday. So right, you're gonna have to measure something. Okay, you're gonna have to measure a square or a triangle. Okay.
Mhm.
You're going to have to do a proration, meaning, right, you're going to have to estimate, or not estimate, you're going to have to figure out how much taxes someone's going to pay when they buy in the middle of the month or year or whatever the case may be, right? Mm-hmm. You'll probably have a commission, right? We all need to know how we get paid.
Right.
So don't mess that one up. So if you have a $200,000 property and you're getting a 3% commission, what's that commission going to be?
You would just multiply, right?
Yes. Right. So it's going to be 200,000 times 0.03, which is going to be $6,000. Right.
Right. Correct.
So a question might be, if broker A pays out 60% and broker B pays out 50% of the 6,000, who gets paid what, right?
Mm-hmm.
So remember, your math questions are going to be word problems, and the answer will be there. Remember, it's still going to be multiple choice, right? So when you get to your testing center, you're going to get a blank sheet of paper and a pencil that you'll be able to kind of make some notes and things of that nature to help figure that out for yourself.
Okay.
This is actually my second try.
Okay, Chris, what was your experience? You want to share that with us?
It was like a a lead test.
A lead test?
Yeah. But it was I guess if you really sit down and study the material.
Okay, yeah.
And,
I can't emphasize enough, guys, if you know your terminology,
terminology.
you'll be able to make good decisions or good choices,
Okay.
right? So if your terminology can help you understand the content,
Yeah.
it'll really help you answer the questions. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if you know the terms and definitions of most of the stuff, it would help out.
Now, there is a book that I use, and you could get this off of Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Let's see, can you see that? It is called The Guide to Passing the PSI Real Estate Exam. It's about 30 bucks. Right? And I've been using this when I took my test in 05. This is the 7th edition. When I took my test in 05, I used the 5th edition. Okay? But I use this to coach you guys. Right? There's the cool thing about this, it has 650 practice questions.
Wow.
If you're like us, right? It's been a while since we've been in school, so you kind of have to get reacquainted to reading and answering questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good practice, right? And like I said, it's not very. I think it's definitely worth the $30, considering that if you have to retake your test, it's another $80.
Right.
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 So. And also another study platform to use that I thought was really, really helpful is called Quizlet.com.
Quizlet.
Oh yeah, I love Quizlet.
Right. So it's really simple. It's free, which we love free.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just show you something. So if I go to Quizlet.com, all you got to do is type in search, type in real estate exam, and all these nice people are sharing their study material with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So here's this Luann Sailors got a great way to help get through the math, but they all have terms and different things to use that is really, really, really helpful.
I had that Quizlet. I got that too. I also got the guy. I think he's Mr. Donaldson.
Oh, did he share that with you guys? Did Chris share that with you guys?
Well, he's actually doing a lot of. I got a couple of links where he's talking on the videos.
Okay.
Explaining everything that you need to be looking forward to on the test.
Great. And that's what we try to do too, guys, because I know it's so much material. They cannot ask you everything that's in this material, right? You'd be there for days, right? Because, both tests, both your national and state, are timed, right? And if you have extra time on your national, it does not roll over to your state, okay? So use your time wisely. It has a clock up there on your screen that you can watch. Remember, you can save time, again, by not second guessing yourself too much, okay? So just kind of pace yourself. Make sure you take your test in the highest time of energy, right? So if you're a morning person or an evening person, take your test accordingly, right? Where your energy is the highest.
Mhm.
Eat a good breakfast or a good meal. You won't be able to bring water or anything with you, so stay hydrated, those kinds of things. So it'll make your testing environment a whole lot easier.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, guys. You obviously have my email. I will send you the slide presentation, and if you have any questions in between then and your test, feel free to email me, and I'll do my best to respond timely, so to get the answer to your questions. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Renee.
All right,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Thanks so much for joining me or hanging with me. You guys did a great job.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks. All right.
Good.